Hello, welcome to another Energy Matters conversation. I am so glad that you're watching this video. It means a lot to me. And when you make comments, it's absolutely amazing. So please do let me know how this series of interviews is working for you. Today, it is a total joy. I'm smiling so hard that it's hard for me to talk. To welcome Tahira Bharmal, who is a communications training and development professional. Her key areas of focus are training in effective communication, verbal and nonverbal conflict resolution, training in public speaking skills, and workshop facilitation and delivery. And I can hear my New York self is starting to talk faster and faster, so I'm going to pull it back. Tahira has designed and delivered workshops to various groups comprising of small, medium enterprises and teams of employees of organizations. She's also facilitated group level coaching as well as one-on-one customized coaching. A certified coach practitioner and group coach, Tahira has 17 plus years of experience in mass communication with an emphasis on training individuals and groups in powerful, productive, authentic communication. Tahira, welcome. So wonderful to have you joining us here. I know you're in Qatar right now, or outside of Qatar, or at the edge of Qatar. Is that where you are? Or
no, the capital city.
Or the capital city of Qatar, and that you live in Dubai right now. Thank you so much for being up late at night to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you. I am just so grateful to be here. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. So let's begin with just talking about energy. What does energy, when you hear the word energy, what does that mean to you, and how do you think about using it in your life or work?
I can start by telling you it means something completely different to me now than it did in my 20s. Energy, it's changed. The meaning for me has changed over the years, and where I am with it now, I think it's a really deeper understanding of the word of it. And I think for me now, it would represent sort of like the common life force that is between all of us, all beings.
Beautiful.
I think that's where my understanding of it now is.
What did you used to think it was when you were younger, in your 20s?
I think what most people would sort of think when they're not thinking on the, like you're just energetic and it's about having that high frequency. And, I think when I was younger, a lot of people described me as energetic. And that always meant like somebody that was always, I hate this word, but bubbly and lively and, always upbeat, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was what it was for me in my 20s. And over the years, of course, that's changed. To today, I think it's a much more deeper meaning for me. And it holds more of a spiritual meaning too, with it being just sort of like it's like almost energy is the heartbeat we all share.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
I love that. I love that. So it's almost like it's like what connects us. It's what binds us. It's what the interchange is between us, among us. It's like I think about energy traveling between cells, and then when you were speaking, I was thinking, oh yeah, and energy traveling between us as human beings and us as other living beings, and I think brings me to think about Thich Nhat Hanh talking about the state of interbeing, that sense of interconnection.
Yes.
So energy for you is the sort of the glue, and also the I guess what would it be, the reflection that we have of one another.
Yes. I think it's also, and I think it's also the space where, and I learned this from your workshop that we did out in California, in the Qigong one, but sort of just understanding that at any given point, and it's not a control in the sense of trying to be a controlling human being, but we can control, or choose rather, we can make the choice of how that energy is flowing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always have to flow it's not always going to flow a certain way, but we can choose the like they say, the frequency or the vibration level that we wanted to show up at. But like you said, in terms of the interconnectedness, yes, I think it's also I use it now as a telling sign for me as well. You know, it's something that when I say telling sign, like I'll meet somebody and I find myself often saying, oh, our energies are synced, or, oh, I like this energy, or I'm not feeling this energy, or I'll sometimes even find myself not out loud, but in my mind sort of saying, okay, I need to have sort of a bubble to protect my energy because I can't go to that energetic level right now. It's too low, or it's not where I need to be right now. And likewise for the other extreme too, right?
So, you know, as somebody who, as a young person would have been described as being very energetic in terms of having energy to do things and being uplifting, let's put it that way, uplifting, as opposed to bubbly, although something about effervescence, you're effervescent,
Like,
which you still are, I have to say, effervescent, but that what happens for you when that feels tampered? Does that happen like when you have those low points? Do you feel like that happens because you're around somebody and you're very empathic, and so that then that's why you have to protect yourself with boundaries? Or does it feel like there's something internal that happens? What happens when that sense of effervescence flattens or feels lower? How do you experience that?
so I think there's two parts of it. I think when there are times when I am functioning at a high level of energy, I will find it drains after a while. I forget to center myself and to find sort of like my grounding.
Mm,
I will find I will feel drained.
mm,
And that's sort of mostly when I'm like, all I want to do is sleep. I don't have the energy to do anything but just get into my bed. That's often when I know I've pushed myself too much and I haven't really taken time to ground myself. And
yeah,
I've
one
just
of the
been,
key things that I heard you say is that when you're not centered,
right.
so that I think there's a real teaching in that you're bringing us, which is, you know, that the importance of centering to be able to sustain, centering as a method to sustainability of energy.
Yes. Yes. I do feel that. And yes. So to get to the point of where, to the question about the low spaces where I feel I need to put up a bubble, is also a way for me to protect my centeredness or my centering, so to speak. I think part of it was recognizing that I do suffer depression. And then this sort of helped me understand it better. Is for me, that's when I'm not practicing centering myself, or I'm surrounded by energies that are not conducive to my well-being, then I start dipping into those anxiety, depression states of mind where I have to then really, really work harder at centering myself. I'm not quite sure if that's making sense at this point. Um,
Well, are you
but for me,
saying, go ahead,
they're both interconnected.
the
Um,
how are they interconnected?
so my mental well-being has a lot to do with the energy I'm functioning from.
Mhm.
And it's not sustainable, like you said, to always either be really high or really low, but that centering space. So it's become a daily practice for me now to begin my day with centering myself
Mm,
and to really listen out for when I'm feeling um, off my center.
mhm,
Like if I'm leaning to either end too much, then to stop and recenter myself.
mhm.
Um, just to keep it. It's not to say like we're just being blah and boring and I'm not having a variation. No, that's not realistic either. It's just recognizing, um, sometimes you'll be in a space where there's negative energy, you know, and there's spaces where people are, it's not really anybody's fault, but you can hear something on the news and
Mhm,
it's negative, and it
mhm,
really sort of sets this tone. Um, I try very hard to be mindful of that. And I feel if that's coming, then I need to put in certain things in place. So meditating is one of them. Sort of really just stretching my body out is one of them. You know, listening to something calming, just to remind myself, where is it I want to be and where is the space I can function best from for whoever I'm interacting with, including myself.
Oh, I love that so much, Tahira. It really makes me think of, I don't know if I've said this before in this forum on Energy Matters, but I about a year ago was on a solo retreat, and one of the things that I really noticed, and I was away from the noise of the internet, let's put it that way. I didn't have
Right.
access. And so I was really just bumping into my own noise, which can be pretty noisy. And I just noticed one day I was walking, I was hiking, I was out in the woods, and there was a hunter. I heard somebody shooting a gun, and it just went right into kind of this like fight or flight. My adrenals went up, and
Right.
I went right into these what ifs, even though I knew that he was probably far away. The gunshot was far away. There was still some part of the what ifs. And then I started thinking about how often every day I am hijacked by these what if, the what if this and what if that. And there's so many, right, what ifs, particularly in these days. It feels like the world, I mean, there's so much volatility and divisiveness. And so the what if, what if we destroy the planet? What if climate change, what if, and those are all real things. I mean, it's not like I want to dismiss them or think that they're just a product of paranoia or something. They're very real things, but there's a way in which when I get hijacked by them, I can't respond to them in a way that I want. And so that practice that you're talking about, coming back to center, calling myself back in, for me, it's really a lot of times just about noticing first, and second, it's breathing. It's like just going into a breath. Is that how you do it too?
Yeah. If I have my space and I'm in my space, I'll take longer and I'll do stuff. But yes, if I'm in rooms and especially when you're training and you're in that zone, you can't. But it is, yes, acknowledging it, and then yes, taking the deep breaths and just breathing through it. And often I'll use my breath as a measure to see where I'm holding the tension, or what I have now come to understand, it's stuck energy.
Yeah.
I'll feel it sometimes in my shoulders, and I'll be like, okay, what's going, like while I'm breathing, I'll be like, what's going on there? Why are we holding the tension there? Is there something stressing you around here? And I'll just sort of breathe through that. And, I'll wiggle my fingers, so I'm like having it flow through me, or I'll wiggle my toes, because
Oh, I love that.
you
Yeah.
can't really do big movements. I'll just sort of stand there and, wiggle my fingers, and, and depending too, sometimes if I'm in a group that's open to it, I'll use that opportunity to infuse it into the training. But sometimes it's not an ideal situation. So I'll do it for myself. I'll just take a deep breath and I'll do the wiggle, and I'll be like, okay, you're holding tension here. Okay, just
Well,
let it go.
that's particularly brilliant to me, because if you're in a training, if you're leading a training and you're starting to feel this, and then you kind of have that like internal inventory while you're doing whatever you're doing, chances are, because I know you as being a very empathic, compassionate person, that you could be even just channeling, right, or
Yes.
connecting with people, people's stuff. And so
Yes.
stopping and then saying, let's all take a moment to breathe or move our bodies a little bit, would be a great way to not just serve yourself, but also serve, and as a better facilitator, but also serve the tension that might be happening in the room that's been unnamed. Because I think, you're talking about, one of the things you do is you're focusing not just on how we communicate, but also what the nonverbal communication is. And so,
Yes.
and because you have a wisdom about picking that up, and an ability to pick that up that other people might not even notice. The fact that you've got these tools seems like it would just heighten everybody's experience. It would raise the energy for everybody.
I hope so. And sometimes
I betcha.
and sometimes you also use it as a means to bring the energy to a level that's even keel, so to speak. Sometimes you're so high, but you've got to bring it here so you can address whatever's coming up next, like if it's conflict or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
And
yes.
bring a highly charged environment to a sort of neutral ground too.
Mhm.
but I think I'd really like to highlight that point, that recognizing it. I think when I was younger, I never understood it. I
Mm,
really never understood that my energies were being affected,
mhm.
and I was empathetic, so to speak, and compassionate. And that really helped. I was named a moody teenager. Everybody said, oh, well, and not just a teenager, for a long time into my 20s too. Oh, she's moody, and it took me a while to understand that no, I'm not moody. I'm just affected slightly more with these sort of things, and I pick them up. And so it was equally important for me to learn how to help myself. um
Right, because this is
not
what,
from a protecting sense of space, but I also come from a culture where these things, we didn't grow up in a house or a culture where privacy or introvertedness were words that people even understood. They knew them, but well, if you'd say, oh, I'm introverted, or I need space because I need to calm down, and be like, well, what do you mean? We're so communal, and we're like this, that whole, I guess, Eastern versus Western, or like Italian culture is. Do you know what I mean? Like you're always, if you had a group of people, um, and you ask, like, I just need some time to myself, it would be like, what do you mean you need time away from us? So it took me a while to understand that I'm really not moody. I'm just slightly more, and sensitive, not being a bad word, but sensitive to these things. And I
well,
pick
there's
up
this
on,
concept of being an HSP, a highly sensitive person. Are you familiar?
yes,
So would you say that's what you
you
are?
taught me that word.
Right? Okay.
Yes, but
Oh,
I'm grateful for it. Yes, 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 absolutely. I mean, until you phrased it like that, I think when we were last speaking, I said, oh my God, yes, that makes sense. That is what I am. And it's also situational, right? Like
mhm.
I am in certain spaces more of an HSP than I would be on a regular day when,
Well, so you were talking about your culture. Let's speak a little bit more about what the cultural norm is, what your culture is. Maybe talk a little bit more specifically about that, and what the norm is for you in terms of your family culture. And then what I'm hearing is that you had to kind of open up and learn, as somebody who is particularly empathic and who absorbs energy, that you would need protection in a way that maybe different members of your family or people around you in your environment might not necessarily think is important, because they don't have that level of awareness,
yeah,
or maybe they do, but they've submerged it or whatever. I'm not sure. I can't really speak about
I
it.
think it might be a combination of all of it, or just even understanding. So, okay, I'm born and raised in Kenya. It's complicated, right? You
I
know
know,
this.
that's why I want to talk about it. I love the
Born
story.
and raised in Kenya to South Asian heritage. So ancestors are from India, Gujarat to be specific, um, and then Canadian too. I was born Canadian because my parents had immigrated to Canada by the time I was born, and then moved back just before I was born to be in Kenya. So I was born and raised in Kenya. So we come from a culture that's what I like to call maybe an Eastern culture. So we were a nuclear family, but extended family was a big part of our um, weekends. You
Uh-huh.
know, my siblings grew up in an extended home. By the time I was born, I think that system sort of just ran its course. But my siblings grew up in an extended family, right? Everybody living together. But we had that. We come from a culture where the door is always open and there's people coming in and out for meals. There's always somebody at home having a meal. We've always got guests. We've got something or the other happening all the time. So there's a revolving door of people coming in and out. Um, you know, there was no concept of, I need to do this alone. Everything was a family event, I'm going to the movies. Oh, we'll all come. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm going for dinner with my friend. Oh, we'll all come. We'll sit at another table, but we'll all just, we'll all come to the restaurant. That, I mean, not that extreme, but that's sort of like a nice way to explain how
I
much.
remember I had another friend who was from India. She had immigrated to the US, and I remember her. She was so puzzled by the concept of I need to be alone that just
Yeah,
like it did not. It was like it did not compute. I mean, until she'd been here for a while, and then she learned. She adapted in whatever ways she needed to do to survive,
right.
be here. But I remember that was one of the first times I really heard that. That sense of
It's a real
how
thing.
definitely.
Yeah.
When I was in the 80s, I traveled around Europe with a small group of my theater company. We were traveling for 7 months. We lived in a van together. And at one point, and what we were doing was we'd go to a town, we would put up a show, we break it down, we drive to the next town, do a show. And we often would, sometimes we'd be two of us would be sleeping in the back of the van, and two of us would be driving and keeping the other one awake,
Right.
or we would be staying at people's houses. And I remember at one point, one of the members said, "God, I just need to be alone." We were all white American. "I just need
Right.
to be alone." And we were all like, "Oh, okay, well, we could do," we were trying to problem solve. She said, "No, I just mean with us," because she was so tired of staying in different people's houses. And I realized,
Right.
this whole concept of what does being alone and replenishment, it's not just cultural, it also just changes environmentally, right?
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
it is. It is interesting. You know, and I think I have to say the first time I ever recognized it was actually after I got married. So I grew up with my siblings and Aleph, my husband. We were all in this culture. And every time I would say I want to be alone, be like, oh, you're pissed off, or you're annoyed, or we've done something to get you moody, or you're having one of those days. Um, but after I got married, my mother-in-law, bless her soul, um, we'd gotten married, and there was people coming to the house to sort of say congratulations and let's have dinner, and I'd sort of like gone upstairs, and I was like, I need to breathe, right? And so she really gently came and she said to me, do you need to take a break? And I said, excuse me. And I thought, oh my God, I can't tell her I need a break, right? Like, because nobody understands this concept. And she said something really, really profound to me. She said, and I'd known her for a long time by now, the history. I'd been dating Aleph for a very long time. So I'd known her for 10 years before I got married. And she says, I know all my children really well. And and my eldest sibling and her also had a special bond. And she said, um, your sister and my son, Aleph, they can go hours being around people. In fact, they thrive on it. She says, but you can be around people, but you need 10 minutes of the day to yourself. So if you need that, take it. Like, it's fine. And I sort of went like, it was the best way somebody had ever articulated it for me to explain. And I actually use that now. I'm like, listen, I'm good to be around people the entire day, but I do need the 10 to 20 minutes to myself without anybody knocking on the door or asking me or talking to me. Just give me my 10 minutes and I'll be good to get back into the sort of system of being around people,
Yeah.
Um, but that was the first time somebody had articulated it enough for me to be like, oh, yes, that's what it is. So clearly I can say that and people will understand it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and, and that helped me make it easier. So then it allowed me to go, my mom and dad, I think my mom's a lot like me. I'm learning that as I get older, or rather I'm a lot like my mom. And I think she understood it, but she also didn't have the words for it.
Mhm.
And so it's been interesting because I'm able to say it, and I'll see her nod in agreement. And I've now started saying, well, I'm a lot like mom. And everybody goes, okay, we get that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, well, if you accept it in her, then she's not moody. So you accept it in me, Um, but my parents were great. They never, I don't remember them calling me moody or them forcing me to be in that. Like in fact, I mean, I've heard them say, well, uh they call me Tahira and not Tahira, but they'll be like, oh, Tahira just needs some space. She'll be with us in a minute. They've never, so which was interesting. Um, so to answer your question, yeah, that maybe they're aware of it, but they don't have the words maybe in these cultures,
Mhm.
or they're afraid to recognize it because there's always that perception, well, everybody is like this and everybody wants us to be like this.
And what's normal? What is normal? Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, does that answer your
Oh,
question?
yeah, abundantly. That's
Okay.
beautiful, beautiful. It was fascinating to hear how you kind of process through that. It was great. So we're kind of running out of time. So is there anything that you want people to know about, what you've learned about how you use your energy in your work or in your business or in your life, in your family? Anything that you feel like you want people to remember or to know?
That is a profound question. um I would like to say that I think my biggest learning is to trust yourself.
Mm.
And for me, that's what centering is. Like you said, you get away from the noise, and unfortunately, we're so plugged in all the time, and it's really hard not or to unplug, right? Like it's almost at sometimes impossible because you have to be plugged in. But I think the I would like to remind people, if not trying to be all high and mighty, but if we're able to go back within ourselves, if it's even for 5 minutes out of the day, it's going back within yourself and connecting back to yourself gives you that 5 minutes that you're unplugged from everything, but brings you back charged almost, 1,000% more, because it reminds you to trust yourself.
Mhm.
Um, and trust, sometimes we go into this, am I feeling this? Is this right? Am I overreacting? Am I overthinking? But if you just take that 5 minutes, it really clears all of that out. Even if you are overreacting, you'll know, yes, I'm overreacting.
Mm.
You'll just it gives you time to listen, to really listen to, for a lack of a better word, your soul.
Mhm.
And that's the part that I think is, for me, really, it just reminds us to come back kinder, more loving, and more generous to ourselves, and then in extension to everybody else.
Oh, thank you so much, Tahira. That is
Thank
that's what I
you.
see you, that's what I see you live in terms of how you be with people. So it's
Oh,
beautiful to hear
thank
that.
you so much.
I love the idea of centering by listening, by taking the time to listen to your soul and trusting it. That's just, to me, this is just, like I said, it's a beautiful teaching. So thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always a delight to connect.
Thank you.